meet my bride. Let's go for a ride in my newfangled automobile. Just where we will go, nobody knows, but it's sure a great way to feel. Behind the wheel of the Speed Meter Steel, it's my newfangled automobile. Hello and welcome to Vintage Car History. I'm Wild Bill and I am pleased to be here with Bob Leibensberger of Timken Bearing fame. I'm certain if you've fans of the channel, you know who this man is. And we're here to talk about a gentleman that he knew from his youth who is a very important person in vintage car history. And it's really a pleasure, Bob, to be with you today, because there's so many people that I talk about on my channel that there's no living memory of these people. They're long gone, and yet you know this man, and you knew this man personally, and that man was Henry Ringer. Bob, thanks for having me over today so we could talk about it.
Well, I met Henry Ringer at a church, and he was 90 years old when I first met him. And he was born in 1895, so he grew up with the car industry, so to speak. And he used to tell me about how he'd go out to Route 62 on a Sunday afternoon, and the people were driving their cars back and forth and between Alliance and Canton, showing off their cars, and it was like a parade that they were conducting. And then, of course, he's the guy that gave me those Dykes manuals.
The Dykes manuals, yeah.
And best I can tell, I think that's how he learned to be in the car business.
So I mean, the Dykes manuals, those have been featured on the channel already. You know, they started out in 1904,
right.
And you know, by the time you get to 1911, 1913, which are the ones that Henry Ringer had. I mean, this was, if you wanted to learn how to be an auto mechanic back in the day and didn't have the money to go to university or to get an engineering degree or something, this is how you did it. And so you're saying that, you know, Henry Ringer, he's one of those homegrown mechanics who, you know, took a by-the-mail apprenticeship, you know, because they didn't have internet back then.
Right.
And use these manuals to become a very prominent and important figure in automotive history.
Well, he was in World War I, and he was in what I call the motor pool. And one thing I remember about him talking, he of course was from Canton and knew about the Timken company, and he always told me about how the Timken bearings performed much better in the vehicles they were repairing in World War I than the Europeans, because they were using ball bearings. And the ball bearings just didn't stand up to the wear and tear that in tanks and things like that. So
maybe that's why Lawrence of Olivier said, you know, nothing is better than Rolls in the desert.
Right.
Yeah, and you said you met him when he was 90. You met him through church.
And we became, I'd say, very close friends. And it was fascinating to know that I could communicate with somebody that was much older than I was, but he was easy to talk to. But he after he got out of World War I, he worked for a couple of truck companies, and I can't remember. I think Sterling may have been one. But anyway, in right around 1928 or so, right before the Depression, he and a buddy decided that they were going to make road sweepers, and they got a contract from the road sweeper business for road sweepers from New York City, and the order was for 30 road sweepers. Wow. And they had those road sweepers ready to ship when the Depression came.
Well, wait a minute. You say road sweepers. You're talking about like those sweeper trucks that, you know, with the wiring,
right?
Those.
Right.
He was building those in 1928.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they had a big order from New York right about the time the Depression came. So they weren't building any road sweepers during that period of time. So they asked him if he'd come to New York and train the people how to use them, maintain them, and that's what he did. And he bought he had a home in New Jersey. But anyway, one day his neighbor came to him and showed him a new car he had. He bought a new Ford 32 Ford with a V8 engine.
No, the flathead V8.
The flathead
famous engine, yes.
Yeah, the flathead V8, and he was having trouble on a cold, dark day and if there was a lot of moisture in the air, the car would barf and, but anyway, he had taken it to the dealer, and the dealer told him they didn't have a fix for it. They didn't know what the problem was. And anyway, Henry thought about it for a while and came up with a fix. And it was kind of interesting. One day, the neighbor got a phone call after Henry had fixed it.
Well, wait a minute. He came up. What did he do to fix it? What was the problem?
I'll tell you.
Okay. I want to know. We all want to know.
Well, anyway, he got a phone call from his Ford dealership and said, "Bring your car, and I think we might have a fix for it." And the guy said, "Well, my neighbor fixed it. It runs real well. I don't have any problem." The next day, the neighbor got a call and said, "We'd like to see your neighbor at the Ford office in New York City." So he went to the meeting, and sitting across the table from him was Henry Ford.
Okay, so Henry Ringer is now sitting across Henry Ford because he fixed a problem with the V8, flathead V8 that they had just come out with. I mean, this engine was brand spanking new at this time.
Right.
Okay. So how did that meeting go?
And Henry said, "All I did was put a shield around it. Kept the fan from blowing over and condensing the moisture into the carburetor."
Okay, so basically you're telling me that what Henry Ringer came up with was basically how to properly air cowl an engine.
Right.
And, and when you're looking at a V8 engine, I mean, now keep in mind, V8 engines had been around a long time. I mean, even before World War I. But when you're looking at, these were mostly used for, at that time at least, for aircraft.
Right.
And so now when you take a small car that has a small hood area and a small enclosure, how do you keep it from, from evaporating problems, with its airflow and with...
Well, if you remember that carburetor had a real deep...
Right. It's
deep throat, I call it.
Exactly, and so he went, so Henry Ringer was the man that
So
went,
Henry Ford says, "How would you like to work for me?" And he took the job. Of course, we're in the Depression yet,
Uh-huh.
And so he took the job, and Henry Ford made him the district service manager for Northeast Ohio. And he said Henry Ford would, about once a year, would come out and actually go around with him, and Henry would come and say, "Take me to where the problems are. I want to hear where your problems are." And he did that for 2 or 3 years on occasions to learn about where the problems in the Ford cars were.
Oh, man.
So that always impressed me. And he worked for Ford for quite a while and always worked in the car industry. And the other thing he did, he helped me with my Model T. He found out I had a Model T that I got it out. I helped my father haul that out when I was out of a barn when I was 10 years old. So my dad became a car guy after World War II because he was kind of like Henry. He grew up with the car industry,
Mm-hmm.
and he loved cars. And during the World War II, they were scrapping all the old cars that he remembered.
Oh, yeah.
And it broke his heart. So after World War II, he became a car collector, and that's how I inherited car collecting. And this Model T was identical to my grandfather's first car. And my dad actually had a picture of my grandfather in the Model T in Gettysburg, which would have been about an 80-mile trip from where we lived in Gettysburg. So that's the connection to Henry Ford. But Henry, when he was when I was rebuilding the powertrain, he helped me give me some pointers and ideas as to how I could make the powertrain a little bit better. So.
Well, I've heard a rumor that, like yourself, he was spry all the way to his dying day.
Well, he died at 101, and literally I would have not been afraid to. He was still driving, and I would not have been afraid to drive with him.
And I know that he did, the man was obviously a natural-born engineer.
Oh, yeah.
Basically he's coming up with the downdrafting system, that's very common now, but back then it was unknown. He pretty much came up with it and came up with how to make a car that's gulping a lot of air, not, condense and fill the carburetor with water.
Yeah.
Okay, but that wasn't the only thing he did regarding wind, was it?
Right.
What else was he doing? I understand he enjoyed making wind, wind machines.
Well, the other connection that I enjoyed watching him do, he made he called them wind machines. And he literally made probably well over 100, but what he made for me was a man cranking a Model T. And you'll be showing him that. And he made the gears. He had presses in his basement to make the gears out of plastic, cut teeth in them. And he hand carved in my case, a Model T with people sitting in it, and a man cranking the thing. It's the windmill blew it. It was just absolutely fascinating. But he would make, like the other one I have is showing a dentist drilling somebody's teeth, and he'd find out what you were interested in, and he'd come up with an idea as to how to demonstrate that.
You'd have to be a dentist to want that, because I personally wouldn't want I don't like anybody drilling my teeth.
Right.
Not even a dentist, for that matter.
But he was very talented, and I guess one reason I liked him, I thought he reminded me a little bit of me.
Another talented man. And I'll tell you, these carvings are beautiful. I mean, you can see the detail in them, and not only in the mechanics and how smoothly they operate, but just in the artistry of them. I mean, these are absolutely beautiful pieces.
But he was a great friend.
Well, I'm sorry that he's gone, but I'm really pleased and that you're here to be able to share with us this person's history and how important he is to the automotive industry, not just in Ohio but across America, because the repairs and the fix that he made for the Ford V8 was implemented for all of the flathead V8s that were manufactured. It was his invention, and he's very important in the history of Ford and in the automobile in the United States in general. So, Bob, I absolutely thank you for having me over here to talk about.
Thank you for hearing my story.
Yeah, well, hey, Henry Ringer, great guy.
Yeah.
And then, and I know that you're in the process right now of writing your own biography. You can go to, what's that book going to be, Bob?
What's going to be
your book?
Proud Heritage, Family, Faith, Freedom, and Friends.
Absolutely. And we don't have a publication date yet. He's still working on it, but when it comes out, believe me, you're going to find out about it, because you're going to want to check that out. Bob, again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Let's go drive an old Ford. Thanks for watching Vintage Car History, and we'll see you next week. Peace.